Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about zero trust architecture. We're just getting into priorities. John, I wanted to ask you, top priority for Palo Alto this year. What's the demand signal coming in from the community?
Yeah, sure thing, Luke. For our public sector, our top priority is to continue to be a good strategic partner with our government clients. That means long-term commitment based on mutual trust and oriented towards common objectives. We think that as government organizations continue their digital and data transformation in the years to come, they're going to see more distributed applications, workloads, and data. And we think there's going to be a growing footprint of cloud native, distributed, and even non-traditional computing devices with IoT and remote work from home environments across their various network enterprises. Organizations are going to need to collaborate and share more data with federal and allied partners, and each organization's network perimeter is going to become harder to define and protect. So because we're talking about this strategic approach to cybersecurity, it can help secure an organization by eliminating implicit trust and continuously validating every stage of a digital interaction. We think this type of approach assumes cyber threats have compromised at least one or more portions of the attack process, though they may not have made it to the end of the attack process, which is what I would define as a successful attack. This kind of approach is going to broker resource-specific access through the least privileged approach that we talked about before by continuous authentication, authorization, and risk evaluation for every request. Securing government organizations' evolving data-centric future will be better achieved by adopting this kind of a data and resource-centric approach to security architecture. So we see this as an overall top priority for the coming year.
A lot of focus on it, and we really appreciate all that. Eric, how about at INA? Top priorities for you this year?
So probably the highest of my priorities for this year is increasing the level of automation, not just across, our SOAR infrastructure, but also across, how we do governance, risk, and compliance, how we do continuous monitoring, how we do, configuration management monitoring, an audit, and all of those things, and the integration of all of those, different pieces of data to create like a real-time understanding of risk across our enterprise. It's one thing to, lock everything down or to have good, incident response, but, it's better to have that ongoing understanding of where risks exist across your infrastructure so that you can do a better job at applying resources to address those risks as they happen, as opposed to, traditional kind of point in time understanding of your risk where, you make an investment, then you move on to another place and you don't really pay attention to what's happened, since then in that other environment where your risk could then be, changing, certainly changing, but, whether you should be concerned about it or not is something, you should know. But it'll also help us to then reprioritize resources that we have today, doing more manual activities that aren't necessarily of great value, and putting those resources to work on the harder problems that we have, the real contextual problems, the things that computers aren't quite as good at as humans. So, that is probably my biggest priority, is to increase the level of automation, but to achieve zero trust, one of the things that we're also doing is, kind of rounding out and maturing our multi-factor authentication. Like Donna said, multi-factor authentication, it's either something you have, something you know, or something you are, right? So you can either do 2 of those or 3 of those. And in some cases, we are doing 3, right? Where, it's really necessary, where we've got folks that have access to systems of, most value with sensitive data. We're applying, a third factor there, but then also maturing that to the application level.
Sure. It's all about that risk, as you pointed out, Rob's pointed out, et cetera. Don, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to ask each one of the federal executives top lesson learned that you'd like to share with the community as you've been on this journey.
So yes, it has been a journey. One of the things that I did do back in the early part of February is I had a zero trust offsite with all of our partners. is to really level set all of the information that's needed, common lexicon, so that we're all speaking the same language. Because one of the things I realize is that we're all speaking different terminologies of what does that actually mean to the individual. And there was this perception that, initially zero trust was just at the perimeter. And then once we start talking about all the applications, then that started to, get everyone in the right motion. And so I would say one of the main things is, really having that communication, getting everything level set, and really define what the use cases are. As IT, we think we like to, know what the business needs are, but generally it's the business that's going to tell us what their needs are. And so really having that partnership with the business so that we could understand, the mission and the right tools and technologies to put in place, because we still have to enable the mission, even though, we're applying a secure way for them to still conduct their business.
Yeah, interesting. Baselining, just definition and nomenclature, very important.
Yeah.
Great catch. Vu, top lesson learned so far.
So there are several lessons learned to date with our zero trust initiative. So like what Donna said, stakeholder engagement, because we know that it is nearly impossible to implement or build a successful program without engaging our stakeholder to get their buy-in early. And then secondly is understanding the business case without clearly identifying the concept, the strategies, and the objective. You cannot really share your vision or communicate it to your stakeholder on what you want to implement, or even know if you have successfully implemented the program. And then understanding your product, right? Because testing is the key here. Testing the zero trust product is very important to find out what breaks or what works in your environment. And then lastly is understanding your limitations, because we need to learn what and where the technical challenges are. So for example, like legacy application and system continue to be a challenge. So we need to, partner with our vendors to solution a workaround for these systems.
Words of wisdom from a master. Thank you, Vu. Rob, top lesson learned.
Yeah, Luke, I think you're seeing a trend here. It's messaging. The reality is there's going to be some changes coming with zero trust. Hey, Rob, why when I log in from my laptop and I'm using this browser, I'm being prompted to add another, pin in, use my password or pin again, or if I'm using my cell phone, it's kind of interesting. When I took away, when I mentioned we implemented our secure service edge capability. I mean, when I told someone you no longer have to have VPN, we're taking that away. It's like they lost their best friend. You can't do that. I'm so used to using the VPN. So, messaging is going to be key. This is why we're moving away from using the VPN, for example, and here's the value that you're going to receive from it. I mean, the reality was as soon as people got on and had our client to use the secure service edge, they were raving about it. They loved it. It was a positive change for them, but you got to get that message out. So a lot of changes coming with zero trust in the next 6 months, year and beyond, and we've got to be able to message it out to our teams.
Cleaner experience and higher security. What's not to love? That's awesome. Eric, top lesson learned as you've been on this journey.
Yeah, thanks. So we've learned a lot of the same lessons as everybody else, but I'll offer something a little different in that, I think for us, applying risk management techniques to your plan for zero trust, find where you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck that you can achieve the fastest. And kind of start off there, right? You're not going to necessarily get to 100% compliance, across all pillars, across all networks. So you're going to have to decide, where is it worth spending the money? Is that last 10% of zero trust worth spending? When you might be taking it away from mission, you might be taking it away from, something else on another network that makes it more secure. So, applying risk management and making sure that, you're going after, that those programs and those capabilities are going to give you the biggest return on that investment in the shortest time possible.
Every federal executive has to deal with risk in some form or another, but boy, the CISOs more so than not every day. Well, we're going to wrap it up here. And I always like to wrap it up with this last question, which is tell us about what it's going to look like 2 years from now. Mark, we're going to start with you. not so much in a petri dish, but coming out of development, the demand signal that's coming in, what can we expect as we look around the environment 2 years?
Yeah, hi. I think that 2 years from now, and I've seen this with a number of federal folks when they're speaking at different conferences. In fact, I just came back from participating in a federal CIO roundtable earlier this week where I was in the audience. And the number one thing they were talking about, and this is echoing what Eric said just recently, was the fast. They want to get to zero trust fast, and they want to do it so that they can show progress. If we saw a lot of the, the executive order on cybersecurity, then the OMB memo, and even the National Defense Authorization Act, they're talking about having zero trust architecture and a way forward very quickly. For example, the DoD and the IC have to have by 9/30/23, which is about 16 months or a little less than that, a zero trust architecture and draft plan put forward. That's in law now. The OMB memo, they're talking about the civilian agencies get another year, so that by 9/30/24. It's still not a long time when we're talking about the federal government. So I think that what's going to happen in 2 years is that they're going to have something done quickly, and they're going to have to show results, right? There's a lot of Al shouts in there to the CISOs, and I feel your pain a little bit with having to implement these things in 60 days or these things in 90 days. But one of the things that I can say is that there's going to be less of a focus on zero trust, since it's becoming more of a marketing term, and more a focus on the actual components under those pillars of zero trust and what those mean. In our case at Illumio, and what we're seeing over the last 12 months is a focus on microsegmentation. And before you can do that, you've got to have that visibility on the back end of your network with the applications and the workloads.
All part of this architecture. I appreciate that. John, how about at Palo Alto Networks? What will you all be sort of in the process of implementing 2 to 3 years from now?
Yeah, sure, Luke. We've talked about a lot of the progress that's been made, but when I look to the future, I still see a whole lot of work that needs to be done. Unfortunately, we've seen there's still some hesitancy out there, even though this model, this architecture, this journey have all been proven to be effective at reducing and better managing risk. Implementing zero trust is a significant undertaking for any organization, especially the large and complex organizations. It requires planning, coordination of multiple service providers, and, as discussed many times so far in this program, change. The traditional security models and the concepts of all or nothing has left a lot of organizations hesitant to begin the journey. We think that starting the journey to zero trust maturity can be a lot less complicated than many believe. We think many organizations that already have some degree of relative maturity in their cybersecurity architecture means it has in place many of the underpinning foundations to make the journey doable. So our vision for the future is very positive, and we want to help organizations that haven't started that journey yet or are just getting started. We want to help them benefit from the lessons that we've learned along the way and help them more successfully navigate that journey.
Certainly is a daunting task. Felipe, how about at Fortinet? 2 to 3 years from now, what's the demand signal coming in? What are you all going to be focusing on at that point?
Well, certainly I'm encouraged on this belief from what I've heard from the CISOs that have joined this call here. I think zero trust architecture, certainly we adopted at least as a strategy, as a mindset, and implemented, right? And that gives 2 major principles to each agency and their employees. It's least privilege and assume breach. And those are very unifying principles that really drives everyone towards a single goal, a single outcome, which really then will then drive certain technology adoption, certain capability adoption, and make the nation as a whole better prepared for the kind of warfare that we're going to be facing in the future. I think we've seen what our adversaries are capable of. We know that they've really leveled up thanks to great innovations from great American companies in the past 20 years of delivering information and education globally. So with that, we must prepare ourselves. And I think zero trust architecture in 2-3 years, certainly adopted from a strategy perspective. And I think the core technologies will already be adopted at most agencies based on that.
Agencies well on their way. Eric, if I'm a freshly minted analyst at INA, am I going to get issued a high side laptop I can sit in my kitchen and do my work, or what's the deal in 3 years?
So that's a great question, actually. So there is a lot of attention right along that space, right, and allowing people to do more intelligence work at different levels and from different places. And so I think, over the next couple of years, we'll see a pretty significant increase in the ability to do remote work and have access to classified from remote locations.
Wow.
I don't know that it'll be at all levels, but
Sure.
And certainly a lot of what we do could probably be done at the unclassified level.
Mm-hmm.
And so some IT agencies, including DHS, is trying to understand better, what is the real classification or sensitivity of this activity, and can we do that at the unclassified level? And if not, how do we enable them to do it at, say, the secret level, right? Maybe it doesn't need to be done at the TS level. So we're very much focused on that, and I expect to see a lot of progress in that area over the next couple of years.
Well, that sounds super exciting, and certainly the ZTA the architecture is going to enable a lot of that to happen. Rob, 3 years from now, you're going to have your identity management laid down. You're going to have some of these other pillars sort of put in place. I know it's never done, but what is it going to look like when you look around in 3 years in the ICE environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that Zero Trust is going to do for us is going to help us share data better, integrate systems with sister agencies, and get our mission, get our law enforcement officers the information and data they need to get their job done more efficiently and effectively. So I think Zero Trust is going to lay that groundwork and help us move forward from a mission perspective. I'm excited about it.
So are we, and we really appreciate everything you're doing. Vu, you and Donna both broad responsibilities there. You got DEA, the Marshal Service, FBI, ATF. What's it look like in a couple of years as you're implementing these different pieces and parts, and you're well on your way? Where do you expect to be, let's say, 2 to 3 years from now?
So, I expect more focus on cloud security to address, the continuing moving of on-prem systems to cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as security vendor and federal agency, we need to work closely together as we identify the right capability to mature, because Zero Trust, as it provides an architecture to add security across all cloud environments. And then I also see, the department will adopt Zero Trust within the next couple of years and embracing it for its benefits in contextual network access decisions and improving incident response. Because Zero Trust will allow us to, respond and contain incidents faster, as it will increase our capability to respond and detect any, abnormal activity or compromise at the endpoint level. And then lastly, I envision DOJ being in the position to share our lessons learned with other federal agencies, because it is our responsibility to collaborate with other agencies so that the federal government can work towards a Zero Trust environment.
And we really appreciate the leadership from DOJ and all the folks over there, you at the helm there, Vu. Donna, if I'm a freshly minted foreign service officer and I'm abroad, at my first embassy, what's my experience going to be 3 years from now?
I think your experience is going to be definitely different from what it is today. You're going to have, you're going to have a granular, tighter, I think, controls. As we implement the Zero Trust principles, right, we're implementing it from the standpoint that you're not trusting anyone. And so as Rob had mentioned earlier, they're going to see that continuous, vetting of making sure the, identity of the individual on the network. And so there's going to be that culture change, that shift that's going to occur from that standpoint. And a lot of it is going to be communication and messaging. But one of the main things that they're going to see, but maybe not see on the back end, they'll see the end product of it is, we will have AI fully integrated along with behavioral analytics. That's one of the critical things that we need in our environment because we're geographically dispersed. We're all over the world in all these different embassies and in some places, you know, in hostile countries. And so we do need to have that behavioral analytics that gives us, you know, the behavior patterns on the network, and also have integrated microsegmentation, especially on our high value assets that we currently have. We have a lot of rich data that, you know, we would have normalized by that time that's going to be able to feed into AI and behavioral analytics.
Interesting balance there where you've got to tighten it up and lock it down, but also unlock it to the right people at the right time. Listen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate thanking all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this program. Big missions, big jobs, super important. We really do appreciate it. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for supporting us on the show. I'd like to thank the good people here at the Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network.